Hi there, that's Kara from Henry Budd College coming to you from my living room here in the Paw, Manitoba. For the last number of months, we had been doing a Cree hymn sing at either Church of Messiah or Church of the Redeemer on OCN. But since basically the beginning of November, OCN's been on lockdown and we haven't been able to do our Cree hymn sing. So for the last couple of weeks, I've been posting prayers from my home here just to still stay connected with the Henry Budd College community and to offer some way of developing community through our YouTube channel or Facebook Live. I was going to do prayers today, but then I thought maybe we need to do something with regard to Advent because the season of Advent begins tomorrow. And we did in our diocese prepare this Advent book, which gives you prayers and readings for every Sunday in Advent, plus some additional exciting things like prayers for the O antiphons, which come the 7 days before Christmas, as well as various readings for every day in the Advent season. So I was thinking about how we could together use this material. And so I'm thinking that maybe we'll do a little recording or even just, an encouragement on our Facebook page to ask people to post pictures of where they do their Advent readings throughout the season, just again as a way to connect us with each other. But I was thinking also that maybe some of you don't have Advent wreaths at home. I have always had an Advent wreath because I really love the season of Advent and I enjoy that kind of reflection. But not everyone has had that in their own tradition or their own background. Many of us, of course, connect with the Advent wreath on a Sunday morning when a candle is lit and the prayers are prayed. But because we can't get together, this time, many of us are doing it at home. So I thought just kind of as something goofy, but also maybe, I don't know, overly helpful, but something that might inspire you. I thought today we could just look at different ways that you can create an Advent wreath or some kind of Advent candle area for you from the things you have at home. Now, here's the disclaimer. I am one of the world's least crafty people. In the sense that I don't make crafts. I don't knit, I don't crochet, I can sew seams poorly, I don't do needlepoint, I can't paint. My crowning achievement was one time a stick man with a toucan toboggan. That's kind of as far as my artistic spirit has taken me with regard to drawing. So I don't really have those kind of talents or gifts that many of you probably have. If I was going to hot glue something, I would 100% glue my fingers together or something to the table that wasn't supposed to be glued. So I'm not a crafty person. This is not me like showing you how to do really cool crafts. This is me looking around my house and thinking, what could people have around their house that could create an Advent wreath or an Advent space? So if you're thinking that you're going to learn how to do a really cool craft, then this is definitely not the video for you. But maybe we can think of things together that could create an Advent space for us in our homes. The one thing I actually am very good at is baking. So I really considered doing some kind of baked good Advent wreath, like a beautiful like braided egg bread with orange and cardamom, or some kind of pastry, you'd see on the Great British Bake Off, or instead of like a croquembouche, like a cream puff tower, a cream puff Advent wreath. But I quickly realized, of course, that really defeats some of the purpose of Advent, the idea that you should probably keep something consistent for 4 weeks. So I don't think that pastry tower or pastry wreath would last 4 weeks. And the idea that Advent is kind of supposed to be a time of fasting and reduction and taking time for reflection and I know that not all of us are able to celebrate or commemorate Advent that way, but historically really is. It is a time that kind of parallels Lent, a time for reflection, for contemplation, for like a reorientation of our priorities. And many of us are able to do that probably this year more than in other years because we don't have our Advents crammed full with Christmas preparations or Christmas parties or Christmas concerts or even Christmas baking. So maybe some of us can take Advent in the spirit of reflection and contemplation. Advent is this wonderful season of watching and waiting. And so that's why I kind of kibosh the pastry Advent wreath. Maybe I'll make something for Christmas where I can feel free to feast and eat it all. But for now, I'm going to look around my house to see if I can find things that could create an Advent wreath and maybe hopefully inspire you to create something yourself. So I'll be back. All right, I'm back from my search to find Advent wreath-like items in my house. And I found a number which will, there's a reason because we have a lot of things in our house that are related to Christmas. As you can see, the house that we live in has a lot of cedar in it. So sometimes we just end up putting up Christmas decorations like greenery and things and then just leaving it up because it looks really good with the cedar in the house. But anyway, here is what I normally use for my Advent wreath. It's just a Christmas wreath that I bought, and it's just fake greenery. And normally I kind of get one of these candle holders. I have 4 of them, and I just kind of put it, I just put it inside there. You can kind of see. And then I buy taper candles, and I put the taper candles in. And so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then my Christ candle in the middle, Christmas candle. And that's normally my Advent wreath. However, this year I did not plan in advance and I did not buy any taper candles. And as we are on orders to buy only essential items, one could argue that those taper candles would be essential for the Advent wreath, but I think that I can make do without them this year and try and be COVID creative. So this year, my Advent wreath is not going to be out of this, so I guess I can put this up on the wall somewhere and then likely probably just end up leaving it there forever because it looks nice on the cedar. So that's not going to be my Advent wreath this year. Also, I found on our wall, I took this off of our wall, another like wreath kind of thing. It was just hanging on our wall. I have no idea where I got this. I thought it looked kind of cool because it was bones and antlers rather. So this would be kind of cool. I could use this as an Advent wreath, and I think I might take this ribbon off, but I think I might because I think this somehow to me speaks right now to the starkness of what's going on in our world and even the starkness of what this Advent is going to be like compared to other Advents. It's not necessarily bad to have things pared down to the bone. And some of us feel that way. Some of us feel like our whole lives have been pared down to the bone. And so maybe this would be a good symbol. So this might be, I don't know, it's in the running definitely for this year's Advent wreath. Now, I found a couple of things that are wreath-like that you could use if you don't have a wreath hanging on your wall because you're a nerd and you just decorate with like Christmassy type things. So I found this big plate. It's a charger plate that I think Keith bought for me as a joke one time because I'm not super into animal print and he thought it was funny. But it would be a great place to put some candles on, and doesn't take up a lot of space. And if you don't think leopard print is overly Adventy, then I found this piece of material downstairs. If I was probably a good housewife, I would have this, I don't know, iron. Sorry, Mom. Not that my mom does a lot of ironing, but anyway, you could cover something like this up with a nice piece of material. Remember, you might get some candle wax on it depending on your candles, so you might put something else on, like maybe if you want a little bit flashy, you could use tinfoil or some other kind of Christmas wrapping or just wrapping paper or some kind of material. So you could probably just cover a plate like this with a piece of material or some nice paper, if that was something that you wanted. I think keeping this with animal print might be a bit distracting, so I probably wouldn't do that and won't use this. But if you had some skills in those areas, you could just make this into a really nice plate and put your candles on there, and it's movable for when you need to move your Advent wreath. So another thing I found that you might have in your house is a frisbee, an aerobie actually, an aerobie disc. This kind of makes me want to go out and play frisbee in the snow, but I won't right now. And I thought, again, you might not want this bright orange disc to kind of hold the candles. So I found this piece of ribbon also I have one Rubbermaid of sewing stuff. And so I found that piece of material and this piece of ribbon in my sewing stuff Rubbermaid. And if you cared to make it a little bit nicer, if you had some string, maybe some wool or some ribbon like this, you could maybe just wrap it around and make it so. I think this was off a dress actually. It was supposed to be a belt. Anyway, you could just kind of make it a little nice if you had a frisbee of some kind or a ring like this. Maybe even something you would use with the kids in the summertime, like at the pool. I don't know. But anyway, something like this, you could figure out how to make it look a little bit, well, less like a frisbee and more like something that could hold candles. So that's an option. Also, no one said your Advent wreath had to be a wreath. Lots of people do like Advent logs. So ta-da! I have a piece of nice birch here that got cut down from our neighbor's tree, or maybe it was our tree. And if you were so inclined or knew someone in your life that was so inclined, you could just take one of those drills that can drill a deeper hole, like for a tea light candle, and put 5 holes in something like this, and then that could just be your Advent wreath or your Advent log, where you have your 5 little candles or your little tea lights in there, and there you go. So you have a log that could be your Advent space. Now, the next thing I have to find are candles, so just a moment. Okay, so I've gone around our house and found some candles. Now, I will admit this, our household is not lacking in very many things. Pens, highlighters, books, movies, love, and also candles. We have a lot of candles in our house because we both like candles. Keith has always loved candles, and so he typically buys like a kind of a cool candle holder when he goes traveling, and it's just a good memory. And we like to have candles sometimes when we eat and sometimes when we watch a movie. And in fact, when we got married, we had all of our family, our brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews, they all processed before our wedding parties, and they all went to the front, and we asked them all to choose a candle, to bring a candle with them. And we had a table set up and with our register, like our wedding license. And when they processed, they put their candles all around this beautiful table. And it was all these candles were lit during our ceremony. It was a beautiful, I thought, picture symbolically of our families kind of supporting us, and just that symbolic reality of all those flames that contributed to our lives. Practically speaking, it probably wasn't the smartest idea for getting married in an unair-conditioned church in July when it was like 40 degrees, but symbolically it was beautiful. So anyway, we've got a lot of candles, and we have clearly more candles than the average household, but maybe you have candles that you can find at your home. So for your Advent wreath, there's a couple of things to remember. Number 1, you want 4 candles, 1 for each week of Advent, and an additional candle for Christmas that you light on Christmas Eve. The candle for Christmas in the center, if you're using a wreath, or even in the center if you're using a log, should be different. If you can find a different candle than the 4 other ones, that would be really great. The other thing is that all those 4 weeks of Advent candles don't have to be the same. Of course, they're the same in our churches when things are beautifully and planned far in advance. But this is Advent COVID style. So you might not have 4 matching candles in your household. Or you might want to choose candles that kind of represent one of the themes from each of the weeks, so they are necessarily different. So don't think that they all have to be beautiful and matching. Just find 4 or 5 candles, 4 for your weeks of Advent and 1 for your candle at Christmas. And yeah, find them in your household or with your family, and then you can put them around your Advent wreath. So You can always use the tea light, which is, many of us have these in our homes. You buy them like at the dollar shop or wherever. And you can just use them by themselves, right? Because they come in their own little handy container. Or you might have like a little container that you put a tea light in that sits in nicely in a little container. So I have a red one here, and here's one that has a heart. Some of these tea lights we have are scented. This one smells like maybe cloves. This one's pine-ish. Pine. I mean, I know what real pine smells like, and it's not like this, but it does its best. So you can use a tea light in a little tea light holder, or you might have a bigger holder like this. This is, I think, one from our wedding, actually, that you put your tea light in for your Advent. And we have, here's another example of one. This is kind of cool. This is from the Isle of Skye in Scotland. Or maybe you might find one done locally. This is a cool birch turned tea light holder from local artisan Ron Scott. So you might find tea light holders or tea lights in your household. And even if you don't have a holder, here, you could use a mason jar. You could just use a jam jar that you're not using for pickles or jam and just put your candle in there. Ta-da! You've got something to hold your Advent candles. Now, if you were going to use this, you might need a pretty big wreath, or maybe your candles could be squished together. The whole point is find something in your home and you can use it. You might have in your house one of these like little jar candles. Again, you can often get these at like Superstore or like Extra Foods or the dollar shop. I don't know if they're essential right now, but maybe you have them in your house. So just a little jar candle like this. I found a couple of nice holders that have trees on them. Here's a white one and here's a black one. So maybe I'll use those. I don't know. And then there is always, like, if you have a taper candle, this is one taper candle I have that fits in my taper candle holder for my Advent wreath. Clearly, I'm not going to be using that this year, but you might have those. What else? Oh yeah, Christ candle, or Christmas candle, I guess. Christ candle is something different, but your candle at Christmas. So this is the candle I always use at Christmas. It's really big pillar candle. It fits nicely in the middle of my Advent wreath, and it doesn't get burned very much, so I can use it every Christmas. You can see that it hasn't been burned, but it does have this kind of hole there. Now, let me tell you, this is a tip, a trick I learned from the Altar Guild. When I first started going to Anglican Church, I joined the Altar Guild. It's a great place to learn. And they taught me a lot about the liturgy, a lot about Holy Communion, of course, the setup. They taught me a lot about ironing, which I'm not very good at, and they taught me how to get a candle even. So what you do is you take one of these aluminum pie plates, and I actually have one that I use only for this candle because it gets wax on it, and you put it on your stove over low heat. So the pie plate gets a little warm, and then you take this candle that you want to melt down, like so you make it even to where the wick is, and you put it on your stove where it's warm heat, and you just slowly move it around like this. And of course, the heat melts the wax until you even it off. So I'll probably do that later today to even off this candle so you don't get that little hole in there. And sometimes that prevents the candle from burning properly. So not crafty, but I have a trick from the Altar Guild that I learned that I now pass on to you. Okay, so I got all carried away talking about candles and off on a little tangent, and I forgot that you might want to add something else to your Advent wreath or your Advent log, and that is some other kind of symbolism. So clearly the candles themselves are symbolic both as light, because Christ is the light of the world, and we think about the time of light being like hope in the darkness. As well as each Sunday is symbolic. Each week has some kind of symbol attached to it. So in our Advent book this year, the 4 weeks we're using the themes of look up, prepare, rejoice, and bear witness. So those are the 4 themes that we're going to use. But there's lots of other themes like hope, peace, joy, and love, or different elements of the nativity story. So there's lots of themes for each candle. But you might want to use another symbol in your wreath, and that is something that is connected to you or to your culture or something that is living. So for example, you might want to set your candles up in the 4 directions like we're using, and maybe you want to use pieces of material or even pieces of paper that you color with the 4 traditional colors of yellow, black, red, and white. So I don't have material like that right now, but I have this wonderful medicine pouch made by Isaiah Broken Leg. I got it at an auction at VST one year, and it actually has the traditional medicines in each of the pouches. So you might want to use the 4 colors around your Advent wreath or along your Advent log, just to kind of follow along with the tradition. Something that I know I always like to put in is cedar, because our property here, our house, is surrounded by cedar trees. And so usually at Christmas, we go into the bush, or we get a friend to go into the bush, way into the bush, and get us a nice Christmas tree, a northern style Christmas tree, which clearly usually has lots of holes in it. And it's great for displaying lights and ornaments because it's not so full and showy. But anyway, I also get some cedar from outside here to put in kind of on our mantle there by the fireplace or other places. And this year I'll use this in my homemade Advent wreath. Because of course, cedar is beautiful smelling. It's one of the 4 medicines. So when I cut this from around the house here, I thank God for this beautiful cedar that is here in our area. And I also give thanks for the homeowner who planted them 30 years ago or 35 years ago from, I think he got them from along the Easterville Road where that big patch of cedar is, and planted them around the border of our yard. So anyway, I will be using some cedar. You might want to get some cedar or maybe some pine or spruce that's in your yard. I sometimes like to cut dogwood when I go off into the bush. Maybe tomorrow I'll go skiing, so I'll cut some dogwood because it gives that nice bright red kind of contrast to the cedar. So you might want something that is culturally meaningful to you, or living or live, that gives that kind of sense of, even though in the midst of Advent we're watching and we're waiting, there is this promise of life, this promise of hope, and this promise of Christ. So I guess I better get to making my homemade Advent wreath and setting it all up for tomorrow, because tomorrow is the first Sunday of Advent. And maybe I will do another little video to show you my wreath when I finally get it done. And to take you along the Advent journey, we'll do the prayers together at some point on the Sunday, and I'll post it up on our Facebook page and on our YouTube page. So I hope this goofy video maybe inspired you even just a little bit to look around your house and to see what you can use for an Advent wreath. Even if you don't have a nice fancy one, or candles that all match, or even a wreath that's an actual wreath, you could use a Frisbee. You could use a plate, a pie plate. You could use anything. It's not how fancy it is or where it comes from, as much as it is the symbol of the 4 candles that are lit in succession, excuse me, and then into Christmas, where we light that Christmas candle. And as we light them, we read scripture, we pray prayers, and we meditate on what it means to watch, to wait, to prepare, and to be ready to receive Christ into our hearts again and anew at Christmas. And so thanks for watching and sticking with this goofy little video. And if you do make an Advent wreath from stuff around your home, please, please, please take a photo of it and send it to me at Henry Budd College, and either on the Facebook page or through the email. And I'll make a little collage, a photo collage or a slideshow of all of our wreaths for Advent this year. So with that, I will see you soon, because I've got to go and figure out how to do my Advent wreath for COVID. Bye.